What is your earliest memory of successful persuasion? While you think about that, I want to tell you about mine. One of the earliest memories that I have is watching World War II documentaries in the early and mid 1990s with my father and my grandfather. My grandfather was an officer in, at that time, the Army Air Corps, now the United States Air Force. And what I recall about those early documentaries. At that time, it was leading up to the 50th anniversary of key moments during the European theater and the Allied victories, trials, and tribulations that achieved those victories. And what I recall from watching those interviews with, at that time, barely senior citizen veterans on PBS was the fact that the Allies saw themselves as the good guys. Of course, that's not obvious. But it is interesting to a child to note that the good guys justify doing bad things because the belief was the ends justified the means. Notice that the winners of wars never committed war crimes. You notice that? I bet you did. Now, those soldiers that I remember watching, those airmen, those sailors, they talked about horrific experiences. And yet, young Joshua noticed that they were able to persuade themselves, many of them, they were able to persuade themselves into the belief that they were on the side of truth, righteousness, and goodness. And it would have been way worse if they lost, which is probably true. Probably true. Sometimes the adult decision is between something that's bad and something that's far worse. So it's relatively good. That's what the adult decision is. That's what you persuade yourself to believe. Now, it turns out that it is a great story. It certainly is. I have met, over the years, many veterans. One of the formative experiences of my early 20s, when I was becoming active in the community, ghostwriting memoirs, autobiographies for seniors many years later, and networking out and about, I found myself one day in a room full of World War II veterans who at that time were more than 100 years old. And this is more than 10 years ago. All of them are long past. And each of them shared their story about what it was like. We had someone from the Army Air Corps, we had a Marine, we had a sailor, and we had a couple of infantrymen. And I recall there was a paratrooper there as well, probably 104 years old. And the paratrooper spoke about being shot down over Germany, a PW camp, a Stalag Luft, a prison system camp. And he recalled the experience to me of escaping. It was like he was narrating The Great Escape with Steve McQueen. You remember that film, right? But that was his life. Different prison system, similar experience. And he was recaptured. And it did not go well for him after that. It was difficult for him to recount details at that point. But he said he didn't feel like himself again after that experience. Obviously, until more than 20 years later, maybe 25 years later, he was watching television as a middle-aged man. And he saw original run episodes of Hogan's Heroes. If you're not familiar with Hogan's Heroes, it's a strange situational comedy, a sitcom from the late 60s, set in a German prisoner of war camp, where the Allied characters, Colonel Hogan obviously being the protagonist, are continuously outwitting their German captors who are bumbling morons, with sometimes a good heart, but very rarely. And the healing power of laughter, of humor, and of humiliating the enemy who did unspeakable things to you. That is, in fact, the last laugh. And so my earliest memories of successful persuasion, that experience built on. And all warfare is based on persuasion. Right now in the news, we've got Governor Josh Shapiro of Pennsylvania autographing bombs that are being made in Scranton, which is very well known as being a manufacturer, weapons manufacturer here in the United States. And those American-made shells are going to be deposited probably in Russia. which kind of feels gross because the United States had not declared war on Russia to kick off World War III. I hope and pray we do not experience World War III because that would suck majorly for everyone involved. You might not be familiar with what's really going on in the ground in Ukraine because that story goes back to more than just the last couple of years, more than February 2022, January 2022, March 2022. If you're not familiar with what happened in 2014, Euromaidan, you ought not be speaking in public on the topic. The country of Ukraine suffered a coup of a democratically elected leader. Western involvement sparked that. There was a very unfortunate, and had been at that time, an unfortunate and severe ethnic cleansing of Russians from Ukraine. Oh, Joshua, you're a Putin apologist. You're a Putin apologist. Putin apologist? Are you a Putin apologist? Yeah, this is, I'm being a Putin apologist. Yeah. And what I just said about everyone convincing themselves they're the good guys, and sometimes there's bad and there's worse. I don't necessarily know what we have here, anything but self-interested parties. I know that I would like to see peace. Peace is persuasive. It is. So long as there's someone who can force the peace. And there's something about the power of reciprocity. Reciprocity. I wrote about this with my boy Jack Posobiec in our book on humans. I'll pull up a copy of it for you. In the book on humans, we talk about how far left revolutionaries who systematically dehumanize their enemies, therefore themselves being dehumanized. Here's a copy of it. On Humans, #1 best-selling book in the United States, summer 2024. During the most consequential week in American politics, when you had the failed assassination attempt of Donald J. Trump, resulting in the coup, soft coup, palace coup of Joe Biden, and the replacement of him by Kamala Harris. Wild times. Wild times. But in that book, we talk about the iron law of exact reciprocity, which is the way to get peace is atomic diplomacy. You try to nuke us, we'll nuke you right back, even worse. So understand that the way to create peace is not peace signs. It's not peace slogans. It's being nice. It's not. President Theodore Roosevelt, is quoted as saying, "Speak softly and carry a big stick." It doesn't end after speak softly. We have this idea that in the West, that to speak softly means that people will see you as strong. No, the best way to be seen as strong is to not act weak. And soft speech without big stickery results in you being treated like you are weak. Understand that persuasion happens in the context where there are persuadables identified. Persuasion happens in the context where persuadables are identified. If people agree with you, there's no reason to try to persuade them. If there's no reason to act, there's no reason to persuade. Why are you not marketing a product right now that you do not sell? Because there's no reason to try to persuade anyone to buy it, because you're not actively selling it, because it's not yours. Duh. This is obvious stuff. And yet we forget. We forget the power of persuasion. We forget the power of exact reciprocity. You do something to me, I'll do something to you. You do something for me, I'll do something for you. And that is all diplomacy is. The reward, trading reward for reward, or trading threat of disaster for threat of disaster. The United States did not wage war with the Soviet Union. I know I'm getting on a soapbox here right now, friends. The United States did not wage war, open war with the Soviet Union following World War II, causing World War III. Did not happen because everybody had nukes. Because both space programs were accelerating. Because there was tit for tat. Because there was toe-to-toe. Because there was fear of mutual obedience, of the iron law of exact reciprocity. And by the way, that is how to handle modern day far left-wing revolutions, is to do to them what they attempted to do to you, which they do not want, and so they back down. So they stop. Often into this conversation, people inject Christianese, not Christian doctrine, not Christian teachings, not even the teachings of or words of Jesus, but Christianese. This idea, well, turn the other cheek, friend. Let him do it. Show mercy. Speak softly. Carry no sticks. That's offensive. That's not Christ-like. I'm not a Christian, they'll say, but I totally know what Jesus meant. Happens every time. Every single time. But coming back to the situation, It's not about attacking for no reason. It's about defending so well that the offenders wish they had not done it, and they will stop. We all hear those stories of defenders against bullies on the school playground, schoolyard. You know what I'm talking about. Where little boy named Stevie. Stevie is attacked by Bill. Wild Bill, they call him. Real temper. Bigger than any of the other kids. They're going through puberty early. And Wild Bill attacks young Stevie. How does young Stevie make the bullying stop? He fights fire with fire. He overwhelms with a show of force an escalatory retaliation beyond what Wild Bill is willing to tolerate himself. So he stops. Playground diplomacy. Bully diplomacy. It works. It works. Now, I believe that turn the other cheek, if you understand it from the context and even the literal wording, it is not about allowing yourself to be victimized. It is about holding frame. It's about standing tall and standing proud. Not about cowering or falling down or whining or complaining. But it is a willingness to hold your frame, hold your head high, and not react or immediately engage in a reciprocal response. But it's knowing that you will blow them away. And they don't know that, but you do. It's an exercise of patience, a sound mind, and a strong will. And it's a resolve that if you got to take this all the way, you will. There's a saying that if you're afraid of strong men, wait until you see what a weak man is capable of. I think that is appropriate here for this context. The weak man loses frame and reacts and makes everything worse for everyone. Which is a story about really the right wing in many places. The right wing can be very reactionary and make everything worse, as opposed to reciprocity, which is, okay, you escalate conflict with us, we'll escalate the conflict right back beyond the point you're willing to endure yourselves. Okay, we're done now. We'll stop. Sorry. Apologize. Okay, we're going to walk it back. We can be civil together. That's what you want the other side saying. The best way to be treated like you are strong is to act strong. We started this talking about the persuasion of World War II documentaries. World War III Persuasion, really. But both sides can point to the other as being the aggressor in the Ukraine situation. Zelensky can come over to the West and beg for dollars and other things, saying, look, Russia invaded us. Russia can go back to their people, Putin apologist again, here I go, saying, look what they did to our people within their borders. No, we're not going to tolerate that. We will not tolerate the genocide of our people, the elimination of our language from schools, the banning of and the prohibiting and the allowing of literal neo-Nazis, the Azov battalion, to go about and commit war crimes in a time of peace against people because they are Russians or speak Russian within the borders of Ukraine. Ironic times. So notice that the World War III persuasion is both sides can say that they're correct. But what's ultimately going to happen is the best story is going to win. And the best story that's going to win is going to be, regardless of what happens, whoever wins, Ukraine and NATO versus Russia and the BRICS superpowers, that's Brazil, Russia, India, China, South Africa, and beyond. BRICS plus, I guess. Plus the alliance with the Arab states, Saudi Arabia and whatnot. The best story that's going to win is going to be, you left us no choice. That is going to be the story that wins. It's a story that won World War II. It's a story that dropped the atom bomb not once but twice on Japan. You left us no choice. The winner is going to be the one who says that. And they're going to escalate. They're going to retaliate. They're going to reciprocate beyond what the other side is willing to endure. And the longer this conflict goes on, thanks, little Josh Shapiro, Joshy boy, that's great. Scranton, Pennsylvania is now a military target. Thanks a lot. The longer this war goes on, the worse that escalation is going to be, and the harsher that You left me no choice. Fate is going to be. I'm not sure what you think, but I'm going to think about this for a little while.